Alright, we're going to go ahead and get our reso uke neck fretted here. Kind of your basic essential tools. Would highly recommend you get, if you don't have them, Max fret cutting pliers. Save your hands and your time some grief, and go ahead and spend the money for them. I resisted it for a long time. Well worth the money. A plastic faced or rubber faced hammer, and then of course some good fret wire. One thing I like to do before I get started, even though I've cut my slots, I like to run my Japanese pull saw through just to kind of make sure there's no glue or sawdust down in my slots. Just make sure they're kind of cleaned out. Blown them out from all the sawdust and stuff, but just to make sure that from gluing on the fingerboard and everything, there's no debris or anything down in there or otherwise. I think there's a piece of glue down in that one. Just kind of make sure that they're free and clear and ready for frets. In our last step, we kind of leveled them out. Piece of glue down in that one. Just to make sure that they're all free and clear and ready to take your frets. You know, anything to hold your fret up off the bottom and give it a high spot. Alright, fretting's pretty simple. I hammer mine in. I just tap them in. I don't really worry about setting them initially. I go back and kind of reset them. I just get them tapped in to start with. I go back and I use a block of wood to finish setting them in. I just kind of get them initially set. I don't try tapping them too hard in because if I get too aggressive putting them in, I overpound them or get off center and then I dent my fingerboard. So to start out with, I just kind of try and set them down in the slot nice and easy. Get them where I want them to and trim them off. I suppose everyone has their own technique. Straight with my slot and just kind of get them down in there. The reason I don't put them all the way down in flush is because I always found that if I hit too hard or something, I would come off center and then I'd dent my fingerboard, which I just spent all that time sanding nice and level and smooth. And what I do is I take a block of wood and then I'll lay it on there and I'll tap them down again across several frets and then kind of spread that load out, and then individually I'll stand the block of wood on top and then kind of use that like as a dead blow and give it one good real good almost kind of like a nail set, one good hit to try and make sure it's set. And it seems to give me, you know, a nice positive set to where I know it's down in there. So that seems to be working pretty well. Again, I come back with my straight edge to see if I have anything that rocks and hits a high spot. And I don't. Everything looks good. So now we can file our ends. Move my clamp a little bit. It's hanging over the one edge. Now, Stu Mac makes a really nice edge file, and if you've not done much file or fret dressing, I'd recommend it. It's a nice tool. It's got the right, I believe it's a 35-degree bevel. Let me get rid of this piece of wood that's hanging over the edge. The proper fret angle to bevel's like 35 degrees, and they've got it's like a plastic neoprene, I don't know what the actual material is, block that has a file embedded in it at the proper angle for dressing your fret ends. And if you've not done much of it, I'd highly recommend it. I do it by hand and by feel. I've done enough of them that it's just the way I prefer to do it. I start with dressing my edges and squaring up the end with my fretboard. I just ease my way into the fingerboard. Once I've got my edges eased, and I start working my angle down. Eyeball it until I get to the angle I want. Whether it's 35 or not, I'm not exactly sure, but I know what I want, and I just kind of go by feel. I just feel it. If it feels right, then I'm happy. You'll have to kind of do what feels right for you. It's really not too tough. If you're uncertain of whether you can do it by hand, I think the Stu Mac block is 30 or 40 bucks. You could probably make your own. I made one for a fellow with a wood block, tilted the table saw blade up on edge and cut a slot in it and then embedded the file. Really wasn't that difficult. and I believe he still uses it. I just prefer to do it by hand. Now I will switch my my StewMac level here to a probably a 400 or a 600 grit, and even though this showed to be level at the straight edge, I will probably run a couple passes with, you know, some real fine paper and dress it again. I always do, just to kind of dress at least the edges here, just to polish it a little bit. But essentially the neck is ready for a finish. I don't know if I'll put a clear on it. Once it's finished, we'll glue it into the box, and we're about 80% there. Electronics, and we'll have this thing ready to wrap up shortly.